Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Today's daf is daf Yud, the Masechta Horayos. We start from daf Tesam at Beis by the two dots before the end of the Perek. We learned to the Mishnah, Rabbi Yoel says that a nasi brings a soyer instead of the traditional carbon oil of a yored. Yeah, he brings a soyer. The nasi is the melech, so obviously he doesn't bring an oil of a yored for Shavuos Ha'edus because you can't force him to testify. But Reb Shimon's shita and Rabbi Yoel is that he brings the oil of a yored for Shavuos Bitoy and Tumas Mikdash. Zokt Rabbi Eliezer, that he brings a soyer, not the traditional oil of a yored. Zokt the Gemara. Omer Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, "Lo Omer Rabbi Eliezer ela b'tumas mikdash v'kedashav." The only time he replaces his oil of a yored with a soyer is only by tumas mikdash v'kedashav. Why? Why only over there? Hoyul v'nemar koros boy kebekvua. Since you say, since a tumas mikdash v'kedashav is chayiv koros b'mezid, so therefore he brings a soyer. Two dots, right?
Okay.
Yeah. If a person is over b'mezid and tumas mikdash v'kedashav is chayiv koros, so therefore he is bringing a soyer, which is a regular chatas for a nasi, everywhere else by chatas kvua, which is zdonei koros. So in other words, Rabbi Eliezer holds that whenever the aveda that a person does, he's chayiv b'mezid karas, b'shoigig will bring a soyer even by tumas mikdash v'kedashav, which is the nasi. The nasi will bring a soyer even by tumas mikdash v'kedashav. Hoyul v'nemer by karas by kebekvua. Amar Rav Papa Chanami Mistabre. Amar Rav Papa Mistabre. D'Yisrael Gedatich Rabbi Eliezer Al Kulin Ka'amar. If he says it also in Shavuos Bita and Shavuos Ha'edus that he brings a soyer. Why does he bring a soyer? Because instead of a chatas, Michdi soyer nasi upar Mashiach makim yachad lechatas. By Kohen Gadol, he brings a par instead of a regular chatas also. So let him say that a Kohen Gadol brings a par, just like the nasi brings this regular traditional soyer. So the Gemara says, Nisna nami soy bazoy. Yeah, Nisna nami Mashiach maybe par b'shmias koil u bitus fisayin. Right, because Kohen Mashiach doesn't bring by Tumas Mikdash we saw. Elom with like Tani Mashiach Shema Mina Tumas Mikdash v'Kedosh of Kohen the Mashiach Pater. Mashiach is Pater, therefore he doesn't say anything about Mashiach, right? But a Nasi that's Chayiv, he'll say that he brings a soyer by Tumas Mikdash v'Kedosh because b'Mezid you get karas on that. Okay, we're up to a couple of lines before the end of the parak. Amar le Rav Huna, the first word on the line is Huna. Amar le Rav Huna b'reider Rav Nosson Rav Papa. Mimai, how do you know? Dilma Rabbi Eliezer kulin kai. How do you know Rabbi Eliezer when he says in the Mishnah that a nasi brings the soyer? The soyer is brought only on Tumas Mikdash v'Kedashav instead of the oil of a yored. Maybe it brings also on the Shavuos Bitoy and on the Shavuos Bitoy. Maybe also brings on Shavuos Bitoy. Uve Mashiach, and the reason why we don't mention Kohen Mashiach that he brings a par, right? Because that's his traditional chatas. Because Savala Rabbi Akiva, don't Mashiach Pater B'Kula. Maybe also like Rabbi Akiva that Mashiach never brings a carbon by oil of a yored. Amalei Rabbi Akiva mi pater le who pater de mi par, who pater him from par? Rabbi Akiva mi pater mi par. He says you don't bring oil of a yored, but who says he doesn't bring a par? Usulay midi. Amar Rabbi Yochanan moider Rabbi Eliezer she'ein mevi asham. Rabbi Eliezer's moida. This is a very interesting thing. Rabbi Eliezer who says that the nasi brings a soyer. A soyer is a chatas kvu. It's a fixed chatas.
Right.
He brings a soyer instead of oil of a yored. Now the shaila becomes, what if he's a suffix? Does he bring an asham tali? So an asham tali doesn't come on a traditional oil of a yored. But now that you're telling me that nasi brings a soyer instead of the traditional oil of a yored, so soyer is a fixed chatas. So asham tali is brought usually on a chatas kvu. So if you're replacing the nasi's carbon by Tumas Mikdash from oil of a yored with a nasi, so perhaps now you could say he's also chayiv an asham tali if it's mesupik, because now the asham tali is replacing the soyer, which is a chatas kavua. So there you usually do bring an asham tali. So Rabbi Yochanan says a chedesh. Moed Rabbi Eliezer she'ein mevi asham. He doesn't bring an asham tali if he's mesupik. Agami brings a soyer if he's a vadai. Doesn't bring an asham tali. Tana talking about Sheish is asham tali bal Tumas Mikdash kadashav. No, Sheish is chaylik. He says he does. Amar Dabal Chmani, Rabbi Eliezer, he Damar Hoil v'Nema Ber Karas Kebekvua, Ma'aser Nasi Sorelel. Why? Because once you hold like Rabbi Eliezer that the nasi brings a traditional, a fixed chatas, a soyer, his traditional chatas. The nasi always brings a soyer for a chatas, and now you're applying it to Tumas Mikdash, so certainly bring an Hashem Tali if it's a suffix. Asks the Gemara, how could Rav Shesha say that? Rabbi Yochanan and Moed Rabbi Eliezer she'ein mevi Hashem Tali. Rabbi Yochanan says that Rabbi Eliezer's Moed doesn't bring an Hashem Tali. Right? What's Pshatak? He doesn't bring an Hashem Tali. Teretz says because the soyer that he brings is only replacing the oil of a yored. It's not really, the chatas kvu. It's not that he is fundamentally chayev this chatas kvu. It's only in replacement of the oil of a yored, and therefore, if it's a suffix, Hagam you'd bring a soyer, but it's not the soyer that's the mechayev. It's the oil of a yored that's the mechayev. Let's say it that way.
It's a little funny the logic there.
Yeah.
Because a chatas is a definitive showgate.
Right.
And the Ashim Tali is a definitive I don't know.
It's definitive I don't know. Yes.
So it seems.
Yeah.
It seems like it's two different camps.
But still, there's a halacha by. We learn from a pasuk by Hashem Toli. In the parsha of Hashem Toli, we learn a halacha. The Gemara darshaned it earlier that you only bring an Hashem Toli if you'd be a vadi, you'd bring a chatas kavua. That's the only time you bring an Hashem Toli. But if it's not a chatas kavua, then you don't bring an Hashem Toli. So here you have an interesting case. Eliezer says, really he's mechuyev in oil of a yard, but because he's a nasi, he brings a soyer. So how do we look at it? We look at it, the soyer is the replacement of oil of a yard, but really the mechayev is oil of a yard, and therefore if he's a suffix, he does not bring an Hashem Toli. Or since we're mechayev him the soyer, so now it's considered a chatas kavua, and he would bring an Hashem Toli if it's a suffix. So it seems like Rabbi Yochanan says, no, he doesn't bring an Hashem Tali. Hagam practically would be mechuyev a soyer if he's a vadai, but that soyer only replaces the oil of a yared. So still, he wouldn't bring an Hashem Tali. That's Rabbi Yochanan's sheet and Rabbi Eliezer. And how could Rav Shesha say otherwise? Says the Gemara, we end the Perek with a word kasha. It's kasha. That's the last word of the Perek in Hoyer Kohen Mashiach. Okay, not an easy Perek. Not an easy Perek. Today I sat in the Bismedrash. I reviewed the whole Perek. You have to, if you want to know this Perek, it's without chazara, you can't do it. You have to review it again and again because there's so many drushes, so many pratim, so many opinions on each one. The nasi, the kohen gadol, and the yachid, and the bezdin. It can really, mamish, yeah. So kaponim hadron Allah chayru kohen Mashiach. I've never said a hadron with such kavana. We'll review you, kohen Mashiach. We have to review you and review you again to have clarity in kohen Mashiach. Okay, now we move on to the next parak, the third parak. A Kohen Gadol did an Aveira. Yeah? What carbon does a Kohen Gadol bring? We learned it already for the past couple of days. Yeah? Past 10 days almost. What carbon should he bring? He brings a par. Right? A Kohen Mashiach that was Chata brings a par. Problem is, before he's able to bring the par, you know what happened? They moved him from the Kahuna Gedolah. Or a Nasi. He was chayta. What does a nasi bring? What's a nasi's chatas? Traditional chatas, not a regular kispa seira. Mishnah Namar Aleph said when a nasi does a shaygig, a nasi brings a sire. Oh, nasi brings a sire, yeah. A he-goat. Not a par and not a she-goat like a regular guy.
Right.
So the nasi's carbon is also unique.
Because it's nasi. I mean, we're talking about
a melech. Yeah, spitz.
Spitz,
right.
Yeah.
That's
why it's a zocher.
Yeah, a zocher. The chei nasi shechata. Are you?
What?
Are you chauvinist?
Yeah, I am. Actually.
Okay.
I really am.
Chei nasi, the zocher is spitz. Chei nasi shechata v'chakach avim migdulasai. So what kind of carbon should he bring? Says the Mishnah. If the chet was b'shasi was a kohen gadol, then even if he's fired from the kahuna, he still brings a par afterwards. And a nasi as well. If the chet was b'shasi a melech, even though they removed him from malchus, he still brings.
So for the rest of his life, he
still brings.
If for the rest of his life,
no,
he has that din.
No, not for the rest of his life. If he did the aveira b'shasi a melech,
right,
then he could still bring it afterwards as says the Gemara.
But I'm saying with the kohen gadol, for example, right?
V'anasi maybe sor b'shiach. Okay, again. Kohen Mashiach shechata v'chakach ovem meshechusay v'chein nasi shechata v'chakach meshechusay. Kohen Mashiach may be par v'nasi may be sar. So if the chet happened b'shas they were a kohen or a melech and they didn't bring the carbon until they're fired, they still bring the same carbon. Okay. Says the Mishnah, what happens? Mashiach she'ovar meshechusay. let's say he's fired, the Kohen Gadol is fired, and then he does an Aveira. Now the Aveira is done after he was removed.
He's ice Kohen
Gadol. Now it's different. The Kohen Mashiach, the Kohen Gadol may be par. Even once he's a Kohen Gadol, even if he was chayta after he was removed, he brings a par. And
That's
a nasi,
good for my question.
v'anasi kehedyot, and the melech, if he did the aveira after he was removed from Malchus, he gets treated like a hedyot, and he'll bring a regular kispa seira like everybody else.
Right.
Says the Gemara, Akasha. If a Kohen Gadol, we said, does a chet after he's removed from the kahuna,
right,
he still brings a par. Kal v'chaymer, if he does the chet b'shas kohuna, he'll bring a par after he's removed. So why does the Mishnah have to tell me that second case? If you just told me that after a kohen is fired, and he only did the aveira afterwards, maybe par, he still brings the par of a kohen gadol. So chota v'achar over meshechus tzricha l'meimar. It's not a chiddush anymore. Avad if he did the chet b'shas as a kohen gadol and then he's removed, he'll bring a par. Says the Gemara, no, the truth is, you're right. With regard to kohen gadol, I wouldn't need to tell you that, both cases. But because a nasi is different in each of these cases, that's why we lump in kohen gadol as well. Yeah. So the Gemara says, tzricha l'meimer, second line, Yura Mad Aleph, tzricha l'meimer shem dektoni gaba nasi dicha avim menasi usoy decha kachata kehedyet domi. Yeah, he's like a hedyet. Once he is removed from the malchus, and he does the Aveda afterwards, we treat him like a regular guy, and he brings a Kispa Seira. That's why we have to say Mashiach is not like him. Maybe par. That's why we have to say by Mashiach not like that to differentiate him. Okay, zug the Heilige Gemara. Menohan Emili. Yeah. Okay. Menohan Emili. How do I know that a Kohen, even after he's removed from the Kohuna Gedoyla, and he does the Aveira afterwards, he still brings a par? Makes no sense. Why should a Kohen Gadol bring a par if the Aveira happened after he was removed from the Kohuna Gedoyla? Why should he bring a par? He's already a hedyet. He did the Aveda when he's a hedyet. Why should he get to bring a par that a regular Kohen Gadol brings? How do I know that? It says in the Torah, V'hikriv al chatasai. Melamed shemevi chatasai misha'avar. Even if he was removed, now I don't know exactly how to darshan. I'm not exactly sure. The Farshim struggle over here. Where is the drasha? V'hikriv al chatasai melamed that he brings the chet even after he's removed.
Because he
Gematria,
doesn't lose all of his kedusha.
I don't know exactly how this is.
He's not Kohen Gadol anymore, but he was.
But how do you see in the words v'hikriv al chatasai? How do you see in these words that he brings the carbon even after he's removed? I don't know. So the Gemara said, It doesn't really. Yeah.
It happens to be Sugi and Yuma.
Yeah.
And it's after Yuma, it's this way. When if he gets Tomei, the Skan Cohen takes over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once he returns to his position,
Okay.
we see the Skan Cohen Ein Moridim Vein Malin,
Right.
Mishum Eva.
Right.
That's the Lashon Gemara over there.
Okay.
That a Cohen, even if he's displaced,
Why he has to bring a Kohen?
Why would he bring a par? Why would he bring a par though?
he's still a Cohen. He still
Right.
has a
Yeah.
He still has a Shem Kohen, you're saying.
Right. Yes.
Even after he's fired, he's.
Yes.
Ein Moridim.
That's what I was trying to
Ooh,
say.
that's what we're trying to say.
Yeah.
Okay, shkoyach. So here's the point. The point over here, they say in the bottom, he says the words al chatos is extra. V'hikriv, we know the cases he did a chet. Al chatos is extra. From that yitur yedarshan that it's marba anytime he's chayta, even after he's removed. Then that would make sense based on what the doctor is saying and what you're saying, Rabbi Chavia, that he's called a.
Even if there's another Kohen Gadol one.
That's what the doctor is saying. Even if there's another Kohen Gadol,
Right. Yeah.
he doesn't.
The Skan Cohen takes over.
Right.
When a Kohen Gadol is demoted, right? But it's only a temporary.
But if it's a temporary demotion, but what if it's a permanent demotion?
He still doesn't lose completely his darga.
That's what we're learning.
By a melech.
The Gemara is not differentiating between temporary and permanent. The Gemara is saying any kohen that's removed,
Right.
if he does an Aveda, he still brings the power that he would have brought if he was still
By a melech,
servicing.
it's a job. by a Kohen
Ah.
Gadol, it's a darga.
It's identity.
More than identity. It's a darga of kedusha that he never loses.
Okay.
He may not be able to do the job, but the darga kedusha that he's reached when he becomes Kohen Gadol, that he never loses.
Okay. So
Maybe.
this is learned from the pasuk.
Maybe.
This is learned from the pasuk. V'hikra v'chatasai. Says the Gemara weiter. Sheyachal, without this pasuk, I wouldn't have said this on my own. V'aloi dinu, because the Kavachimer, I would have darshan the Kavachimer differently, because it says a man nasi shemevi b'shigigas ma'isa. We know a nasi to bring a chatos, he doesn't have to have shigigas eirah to paskin for himself wrongly and then do it. Shigigas ma'isa alone is mechayiv and mechatos. Man shemevi shigigas ma'isa ein mevi chatos misha'ovar. A nasi l'chayra, for him it's easier to bring a chatos because he doesn't need shigigas eirah to proceed the shigigas ma'isa, and yet he does not bring a chatos, a soyer, if he was removed from the nesias, from the melucha. So Mashiach she'ein maybe b'shigas ma'isa. Mashiach, when he's a kohen gadol, it's much harder for him to bring a chatos. Why? He needs shigas eirah first, and then shigas ma'isa. So then I would have thought it's harder for him to bring a chatos than a nasi. So maybe because he only brings al davka al dovrim shigas ma'isa. So like kolshkin, is it not a kavachomer? If it's so hard for him to bring a chatos b'shas the kahuna, is not a kavachomer that he doesn't bring a chatos if he's chayte after the kahuna? Talmud Leimer, that's why I need the pasuk to teach me hikra al chatos malamed shemevi al chatos misha'ovar. That he brings a chatos even if he brings that par, even if he did the aveda after he was avar memshechusoi, after he was ois kohen gadol. V'neisen ami nas v'kavachomer asks the Gemara. Once I know the kohen Mashiach that he brings his carbon, carbon that's meyuchet for a kohen gadol even if he sinned after he was removed. So I said, let's learn a nasi from a kavachomer that he should also bring his soyer if he's chayte after he's removed from the kingdom. But next time kavachomer, Mashiach she'in maybe b'shigas ma'isa, maybe chatos. He brings a chatos misha'ovar. In other words, he doesn't bring it. It's so hard for him to bring a chatos when he's a kohen gadol. He has to first do shigas eirah, then shigas ma'isa. And yet we tell him that you bring a par lachatos if you're chayte after we remove you. So nasi, by a nasi shemevi chatos, it's much easier for him to bring a chatos with shigas ma'isa alone. He doesn't need shigas eirah. B'shas he's a nasi. Ein adin shemevi chatos misha'ovar. So certainly, if it's easier for him to bring a chatos when he's a melech, so certainly he should be able to bring a chatos even after he was removed from the melucha. Tamad loy mar shenasi yechta kshu nasi and kshehedyot loy. There's a pasuk that emphasizes by the chatas of a nasi that he only brings the unique chatas of a nasi, which is a soyer, asher nasi yechta, while you're a nasi. Right. You can't bring it if you're chayta afterwards. Right. By a kohen gadol, we have the pasuk v'hikra v'chatasoi. It's extra, teaches you even if you're chayta. After he's removed from Kohen Gadol, he still brings the power, the unique chatas that a Kohen Gadol brings. By a nasi, we have a pasuk the opposite. Asher nasi yechta. You have to be a nasi b'shas your chayta. Says the Mishnah.
Kohen Gadol never loses a kedusha. A nasi, it's just a job.
You said that, yeah.
Right.
Look at the Mishnah. Chatu atshelo nesmanu v'achar kach nesmanu harei elu ke'edyotis. Now go the other way around. What happens if they were chayta when they were still at yotim before they were elected?
Yeah.
V'achar kach nesmanu. And afterwards, before they brought the carbon, they were elected as Kohen Gadol or as Melech.
Yeah.
So which carbon do they bring? Do they bring the carbon b'shas, the chet, which happened when they were at Yotis, so that would necessitate a Kizbar Se'ira? Right. Or they bring a carbon that's triggered for a Kohen Gadol and a Nasi, a Par, and a Sar, respectively. Harele Kedyotis. Mishnah says Pashut that they're Kedyotis. Right? If they did the Chet beforehand and then they were elevated to Kahuna or to Melech, right, then Avada they bring like a Hedyot, which is Kiz Basir. Reb Shimon says, no, it depends. If they only found out that they were a Shoigig, Achelo Nesmanu, then Chayovim, Imishin Esmanu, Pturim. When they found out that they made a mistake, they ate chayla, for example, b'shoigig, then they're chayiv a chata shel hedyot, because they weren't nesmana yet. The trigger of the chayiv happened while they were a hedyot, because when are they mechuyev to bring a carbon? Mishas hoida, as soon as they find out that they made a mistake. So if they found out they made a mistake before they became melech or kohen, then you have to bring a regular chatas. U'mishin esmanu. But if you only found out that you did the aveda, and it happened b'shoigig, you made a mistake once you were nesmana, then you bring a par, or you bring a sor, or you bring nothing. You're pturim, because now you can't really bring anything, because the chet was this, the idah was that, so you're stuck. So pturim legamri. Yeah, you don't bring anything really. That's Reb Shimon Svara. A hedyet. And the idah, he found out about the chet, right? When he did it, he didn't know he's sinning. He's chaylev. He doesn't know that he's a... Then he finds out later. But when is later? Once he's a kohen or a melech? So Reb Shimon says, if you found out once you're a kohen or a melech, oh, I made a mistake, I'm chuy the carbon. Pturim legamri. You don't bring it. Why? Because the chet was kizbas, you're between a rock and a hard place. And now the idah happened when you're already a kohen godly, you're mechuy the par. So which one do you bring? Chvais nicht. Pturim legamri. Metziut acheret. So, but if you found out about the mistake before you became a kohen or a melech, yes, that's still the metzius of a hedyot, so you bring a kizbar seira. Yes. So it was machlokes Tanakama and Reb Shimon. Do you go b'shas chet or b'shas hoidah? Tanakama says all that matters is when was the chet. Did the chet happen
When he was
before?
Right.
Then you bring like a hedyot. If it happened afterwards, then you bring like a par for a kohen gadol and so on. Reb Shimon says no. It depends. It all depends on the shas hoidah. Okay, so then you're running into issues. Ezu Nasi said the Mishnah, who's a Nasi? Nasi brings a soy, remember, doesn't bring a regular kispasir. So who's a Nasi? Who's qualified as a Nasi for this halacha? Ze melech, shenemar, mikol mitzvos Hashem elikav. When it says by the Nasi that he does a sin, he makes a mistake, it says, if he asheloise asena mikol mitzvos Hashem elikav. What does mikol mitzvos Hashem elikav? She'ein al gabav el al Hashem elikav. Nobody is his boss. He doesn't work for anybody. Nobody tells him what to do. He is mamish, the melech. The only one above him is the Rabbeinu Shleilam. So that's why we know Nasi is a melech. Says the Gemara, how do I know? How do I know what? That if a Nasi or a Kohen Mashiach did a chet before they became a kohen or a melech, they bring a carbon like a hedyot. The chet has to happen. B'shas is a kohen gadol already for him to bring a par. If the chet happened before, he brings a regular carbon like a hedyot.
Right.
So the Gemara says, if not for this pasuk, I would have thought the opposite. Logically, I would have thought the opposite. Why? I would have made another kavachaymer, a different kavachaymer that leads me to the wrong halacha. Oman nasi shemei b'shigas ma'isa. If a nasi, nasi brings, it's much easier for him to bring a carbon, right? It's more chamer. He brings a carbon even if he does the ma'aseh b'shoigig without shigig asirah first. Still ain't mevi al koidmis. He doesn't bring a chatos on aveirus hakoidmis. If he makes the mistake before he becomes a nasi, he doesn't bring. If he makes the mistake, he doesn't bring it. Mashiach she'ein mevi chatos ela al dar mashigas ma'aseh. So therefore, it would have been a kavachaymer for Nasi to say that he doesn't bring a carbon for a virus that happened before he became a kohen. But says loy. No, that's not a good kavachaymer. Marti ben Nasi. You know why the Torah was makel by Nasi? You can bring a carbon easily just for shigas ma'isa. Because by Nasi we find he doesn't bring a chatos once they removed him from the siyas. Taimar b'Mashiach, but a kohen Mashiach, we just said earlier in the previous Mishnah, a kohen gadol, even if he's choyte after they removed him from the kahuna, he brings a chatas. Shemevi chatasim misha'avar, right? Even after he's over mikuna, so he still brings a chatas. So therefore, I would say hoyle mevi chatas misha'avar yochel ala koidmis. He can also bring on koidmis. Talmud loymar haMashiach yechta. Chatak sheMashiach mevi kshehedyet eina mevi. If he's chatak sheMashiach is mevi. That is the pasuk of Kohen Mashiach Yechta.
Maidan b'kodesh ve'en moridan. That's only shy by the Kohen Gadol. The Melech, it's not kedusha. It's a job.
Yeah, you said that. Yeah. V'taina b'gabe nasi kai gavna. We also learned this same braysa by nasi. Asher nasi yechta prat lekoidmis. That it says asher nasi yechta. It's mamayit any averas that he did before he became a nasi. He doesn't bring a sorry for those averas. Mar says validinu. If not for the pasuk, I would have said he does bring a sorry for averas that he did before he became a nasi. Why validinu? Uma Mashiach shemevi chatas misha'avar eino mevi ala koidmis doesn't bring a chatas on koidmis. Nasi shemevi chatas misha'avar eino din shelu ala koidmis. Nasi she'ein mevi. Chatasa misha'avar, thank you. Nasi she'ein mevi chatasa misha'avar, eino din shelo yavi al hakoidmis, certainly he shouldn't bring on Averis that he did before. He shouldn't bring on Averis that he did before he became a Nasi. Yeah? So the Gemara says, no, the Pirch on the Kavachayim, Malam Mashiach Sheken Ein Mevi B'Shigi Gasmaisa. Time of Benasya Mevi B'Shigi Gasmaisa, Hoyle Mevi B'Shigi Gasmaisa, Yovel Akoidmis, therefore can bring a Koidmis as well. Tamad Lemer Shenasi Yechta Shechota V'Arei Nasi V'Lo Shechota V'Dei Adyat. He doesn't bring a Chatas and not a Soyer, only he only brings it while he's a Nasi. Okay. This is very interesting Gemara. Now, if you made it to this point, you're going to make it to the rest of the Masechta. You know why? Because now we get into Agadata. So the last couple of blot of Horayos is Agadata. Okay, let's go. Tanu Rabbanan.
Where are you?
We are on the fifth wide line and Yurim and Aleph. Tanu Rabbanan, the two dots.
Yeah, okay.
Tanu Rabbanan. Asher Nosi Yechta. The Torah says Asher Nosi Yechta. Yochel, I would have thought. Gzeira. Why the Torah says Asher Nosi Yechta? It's like almost that Hashem says he's going to do an Aveira. Hashem removed free will over here. Hashem is predicting in the Torah Asher Nosi Yechta. When? Asher is when. When the Nasi will sin. Doesn't say if. Im Nasi Yechta. Asher. What is it? Is it Gzeira? It's Gzeira min Hashemayim that the Nasi will do an Aveira. Tamad Loimer im HaKoyin HaMashiach Yechta. No, the Torah tells by Koyin Mashiach the word im. So Malalon Likashe Yechta if, right? Not that he's for sure going to do the Aveira im. Avkan Likashe Yechta. So too over here, it's Likashe Yechta, right? Because Mardama Koyin Mashiach the Nasi, right? So therefore we say that it means im. Omar Mar. So we just learned the Braisa Yochel. I would have thought Gzeira. It's Gzeira b'Shamayim. Gzeira mechatesi. How would you come to the Pirish of Gzeira? Yeah? Where do you find in the Torah ever there's a Gzeira on a Besura Ra? There's no Gzeira on Besura Ra. So why would we even have a Havamina, Yochel Gzeira? Without the Pasuk of Imkoyin HaMashiach, I would have said, Asher Nasi Yechta means that Hashem was geyser that the Nasi will sin. Where do we find a parallel example anywhere in the Torah that there is a Gzeira on a Besura Ra that I would have interpreted Asher Nasi Yechta that way, if not for the limit of Imkoyin HaMashiach Yechta, that it's only optional. You know, even a Havamina like that. A Havamina that there's a Gzeira Mishamayim al Besura Ra that somebody's gonna have a misfortune. Yeah? In the Torah? Where do you find that? Where says Amri in? Yeah, we find Ashkan. We find Chsiv and Asati neged tzras b'veis eretz chazaschem besuri lev shenagoyim boim aleim. Hashem says v'nasati. I'm going to give you neged tzras b'veis eretz chazaschem. That's a besura ra. Yeah, so it's a besura ra. You see this gzeira. Hashem gave a gzeira v'nasati neged tzras b'veis eretz chazaschem. Did Rabbi Yoel? Rabbi Shimon Omer pratla nega einzin. No, you don't darshan it for that. That's a limud. That it's only v'nasati neged tzras. It's only what I put there, but not if it's an oinus. Yeah? What's an oinus? Yeah? Mor's going to tell you in a second what an oinus is. But only if it's an oinus, then if it's an oinus, none of the dine nige batam apply on a nega that is found in a bias if it happened by oinus. So the Gemara says, Lav Omer Rabbi Yehuda Besura? According to Rabbi Yehuda, right? Rabbi Yehuda's Chalak Hashem, he says that was a Besura Ra. So once you find that Rabbi Yehuda says there's such a concept of Besura Ra, there's a Gzeira, that Hashem said they're going to come to Goyim, so too, I would have said, I would have said over here, but Asher Nasi Yechta, that it's a Gzeira Ra, Hashem says, the Nasi will for sure do an Aveira. Helkach Ksiv Im, that's why I need the Torah to write Im Yechta by Kohen Mashiach, to teach you that Asher doesn't really mean for sure. It means also Im. Yeah. So the Gemara says, asks the Gemara, by the way, this is a very, very difficult Gemara because we learned Sanhedrin and we saw in Sanhedrin that there are 3 parshas in the Torah that never happened. Yeah? Ben Soider Amoira.
Right.
Irani Dachas.
Yes.
And
Shlomo Melech.
And Nige Batim.
Taka.
Nige Batim. So why could the Gemara say
that
Defanasati Negatzaras Vaveis Eretz Achuzaschem is a Besura Ra? It's a Gzeira. This is what's going to happen. It's one of the only parashas in the Torah that actually never took place. Yeah.
So what about this tearing
interesting.
the wall apart to finding treasures inside?
Oh, Nachakasha Rabbi Chavi is asking. What about the Gemara that says that Rashi in Chumash says it. Rashi in Chumash Kotev.
Yeah.
Oh, according to one man, the Omar in Sanhedrin, it only happened once. It's machloikas, pashtus. But there's another Rashi Rechav is mentioning is that we know it's really a Basura Taiva.
Yeah. Yes.
Because Rashi says the Amorim hid their treasures in the walls of their homes.
Right.
And Hashem said, and then you have to destroy it, you have to dismantle it, and then you'll find the treasures. But still, the Mefarshim say that it's still called a Basura Ra because Hashem, if He wants to give you treasures, He doesn't have to force you to destroy your home.
Yeah.
So it's still a Basura Ra somewhat.
Right.
So still, He can bring a riot, there's a Gzeir on a Basura Ra. But either way, the Gemara wants to know, if Shimon says that when a Sati Nega Tzeras is Prat Le Nige Oinsin, which means that Nige Oinsin is not Matama, or if Shimon Nige Oinsin Mila Matama, asks the Gemara, Vatanya, Odam Kiyah, Ba'ir Besaroi, Menadibur Ve'elech, which means Kiyiyeh B'loshen Asad. It's only relevant after Matan Torah. The whole parsha of Negoim is only relevant after Matan Torah. Ask the Gemara, V'leidinu, Timei Bezav, Timei Benegoim, Ibis Matama Bezav, and Matama Benegoim. Yeah, so Mazov Menadibur Ve'elech, Af Negoim Menadibur Ve'elech. Why did the Torah have to give me a drasha that Negoim Nigei Adam is only relevant after Matan Torah? I could have learned it from a Mematzinu, a Binyanav, from Zav. Timei Bezav, V'timei Benegoim. The Torah was Geyser to Mazav and Tumas Negatzeras. Mazav Menadibur Ve'elech, because it says Ish Kiyiyah, the same lashon. Af Negoim Menadibur Ve'elech. Right, the two types of Tum I could have learned Negoim from Zav. Why did the Torah have to give me an extra drasha for Negoim? The Gemara says Loi. Imamarta Bezav Shekei Ein Matama Ba'inus. Right, a Zav is different. Right, he's not Matama Ba'inus. Toimer, not right. If let's say Zav, we can attribute why he had a ziva. Because he ate something or whatever, he's not matama, right? If it's a goyim chitzayni, he's not matama. It's ba'inus. Timer ben goyim shematamen ba'inus. So Bryce not like Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon just said when a sati neged tzeras is prat l'nigay oinsin. This Bryce clearly says that by nigay batim, even if it's an oinus that's matama, that's why I need a separate drasha. Tamad loimin odem kiyiyah men adibur ve'elich. Rava Omar, Rava says so. There's a teretz. Rava gives a teretz. There are two types of oinsin: prat l'nigay ruchos. Yeah, when Reb Shimon says that prat l'nigay oinsin, it means if ruchos. Rashi says, what is prat l'nigay ruchos? Prat l'nigay ruchos is al yedei. Probably goes al nefichas shade.
It says
Evil spirits or
sorcerers.
Sorcerers. Rav Papa Amar prat l'nigay kshafim. No, Reb Shimon is talking about a type of oinus that is spiritual. Yeah, it's not just. It's a spiritual oinus. In other words, there's some ruchos or maisik shofim that led to this nega.
So it's not.
That's not matame.
So it's
but
not
stam.
connected.
But
to
there's another kind of oinus that is matame. Lamashal oinus haba ayidei maisa adam.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes the oinus haba ayidei maisa adam. That kind of oinus is matame. For example, let's say it gets a bruise or a burn, and then when it heals, it creates a white spot and all the characteristics of a nega. Yeah. Right. So that happened. Ayidei goyim chitzayni. It's an oinus. Still, that Dr. Shimon of that oinus. Yeah, it would still be matame. It's only if it's nigay kshafim and nigay oinsim and nigay ruchos. Okay, Tonu Rabbanan Ashenasi Yechta Prat L'Choila. A melech that became a choila, he was removed from his kingdom, so he doesn't bring the traditional carbon of a nasi, which is a soyer and a schet. Ask the Gemara, just because a melech becomes sick, right, doesn't mean that they remove him from office. Yeah. First, a melech can have a headache, can have a fever, can have a temperature. No, it's only Batziras. Like you said yesterday, yes. You mentioned it yesterday beautifully. They put his son in charge. Yosem ben Eziyahu, he was in charge because his father became a Mitzorah ad Yoim Moisoi. You said yesterday. So the Gemara said, it sounds like he became free once he was removed from power. Because it says, when he came a Mitzorah, they put him in the base hachavshis. Yeah, he's free now. It sounds like he was an Eved when he was a king. Says the Gemara, yes. A king is an Eved to his constituency. Yeah. A king is supposed to serve, not be boss. Ain't melech b'lo. He has to serve his nation. So Gemara says, where do you see that Sirora is Avdos? They were on a boat. Bahadi Direm Gamliel have a pita. Gamliel brought a backpack and he had a pita. Yeah, he had a little bit of bread to feed him. Behad Rabbi Yeshua have a pita v'sulta. Rabbi Yeshua brought extras. He brought a pas and he brought soilus, also flour. Shlim pita to Rabbi Gamliel. Yeah, the voyage took longer than expected, and Rabbi Gamliel ran out of food. The samach asulta to Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Yeshua shared the extra food that he brought. Amar Leisi said to Rabbi Yeshua, "Mi avi yadata davlan kuva kolai da'is asulta." How did you know that the trip is going to take longer than it originally was supposed to take? Amar Lei koichav echad b'shivim shana oila omata es sapanim. I know that there's one star, yeah, that is mata the sailors. The sailors get confused, and therefore it takes them longer to get where they have to because it's mata sasafanim. Well, Martin, I said, Shema Yala v'yata isonu. Perhaps this is the season where that koichav is going to appear. The sailors are going to misdirect the boat, and therefore it's going to take longer. So I packed more food. Rabbi Gamliel was very impressed. Don't forget, Rabbi Gamliel B'Yeshua, the Gemara in Bracha says they were, Rabbi Gamliel. They removed him from the Nesias after what he did to Rabbi Yeshua. Remember? Yeah, he embarrassed him. Avoid al raglecha. Yeah, he was. This is the famous duo. So the Gemara says, "Kol kach b'yotcha." You're so wise. Va'ata oila b'sfina, and you have to travel to make a living. If you're so smart, why can't you stay local? Why do you have to be on a boat to travel to make a living? Amalei. You're asking the question on me. Ask your question on two talmidim you have. They're so smart, they can estimate, they can measure, and they know how many drops are in the ocean. Look how smart they are, and they don't have paslech or beged l'ilbesh. Yeah, zog the Gemara, nosan daitoi lo yeshivam b'roish. So Rabbi Gamliel, when he came back, he's decided he's going to come back. He's going to make them into Rashi Yeshivas. He's going to give them a stellar in the yeshiva. Oh, Pashas, why is he going to give them a stellar? To make them rich. I never knew a stellar can make you rich. I never knew a Rosh Yeshiva could be rich. Depends on which one. Usually not. K'sha'Allah, when he got back to the Abasha, Shalach lam, he called them v'loy bo, and they didn't come. Chazav v'shalach habo. He sent them again. He says, come! I want to talk to you. You didn't want to come because you're running away from Sarara, because you think I'm going to make it into Rosh Yeshiva, and you want to be Berech and Akaved. He says, trust me. Avdus ani nois lechem. Yeah, I'm making you Rosh Yeshiva, but believe me, it's not Sror, it's Avdus Shenemar. It says Rechav ben Shloimeh, it says when he was Molech Tachasov, Vaydabru Elov Leimer, Im Hayoim Tia, Eved La'am Hazeh. When he appointed him as king, he said, today you're going to become an Eved. Now, I just want to, very quickly, how could it be? It's unbelievable. How could it be that Rabbi Gamliel appointed these two Talmidim as Rosh Yeshiva after he heard that they don't have money? Yeah, you know Rosh Yeshivas, they don't have money. They travel the world to fundraise. That's what they really do. Yeah? If you want to not have money today, become a Rosh Yeshiva. Zukt Rashi and Tainas is an amazing, amazing Rashi. I heard it from Yisraeli Bornstein, a whole shir on this. But this Rashi is incredible. The Gemara in Tainis Chafal, the Gemara says that Ilf and Rabbi Yochanan were sitting under a wall, and Rabbi Yochanan heard a malach say, he says, two malachim say, we're gonna collapse the wall over you because you were azvu chaye olam, and you went to chaye shah because they were sitting and learning, and they started doing business. Yeah. Right? The Gemara in Tainis, Ilf and Rabbi Yochanan Chafalef. So what happened was, the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan said to Ilfa, you heard this? Ilfa says, nothing. I heard nothing. Rabbi Yochanan says, I heard it. Must be that I have to go back and learn. So he went back to learn, and the Gemara says that Ad Ose Ilfa, before Ilfa came back, he went to become a businessman, and there's a whole shtickle Torah. It seems Ilfa was a bigger Talmid Chacham than Rabbi Yochanan. He knew more Torah than Rabbi Yochanan. But still, Molech Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan became a melech. Yeah. Zukt Rashi, you're not going to believe this Rashi. I couldn't believe it. I had to look at it inside. I heard it from Rabbi Sully. Molech Rabbi Yochanan Chafalef and Tainus. Molech Rabbi Yochanan, says the Rashi, Minuhu Rosh Yeshiva Aleyan. They made him into a Rosh Yeshiva. Minighu, says Rashi. It's a minig. Mishu Rosh Yeshiva, whoever becomes Rosh Yeshiva, Hoyemegadlin Oisei Mishalehen Umashirin Oisei. They made him wealthy. A Rosh Yeshiva in the olden days became an Oisher. We learned it yesterday by a Kohen Gadol. HaKohen HaGadol Me'echav Gadlu Mishal Echav. Right, a Kohen Gadol, you have to make sure he's rich. right? He couldn't be under anybody's influence. He had to have money. He had to have money in his bank account, right? So B'meila, what happened to Rabbi Yochanan when he went to become Rosh Hashiva? How did he get Molach Rabbi Yochanan? He became wealthy. Where did he get money from? He became money because Gadleyu Mishal Echav. So Sruli was saying that Abaye, if you look in Shas, many times the Gemara insinuates that Abaye was an ani, and other times Abaye was a usher. He was telling his workers what to do. I got some ice with Abaye. Sometimes the other says, how can it be? Abaye was an ani or usher. The teretz is Abaye became Rosh Hashiva after Rav Yosef in Pompadisa. When he became Rosh Hashiva, Rashi says the minig was to make Rosh Hashiva wealthy. Yeah, so Abaye was poor all his life, but when he became Rosh Hashiva Pompadisa, became wealthy, became an usher. Yeah, Gadleyu Mishal Echav. So that's what Rabbi Gamliel said over here. Oh, my two Talmidim are so poor. I'm going to make them into Rosh Hashivas. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Right. Yeah. הוא לא היה עשיר. כן? זה מפורש? איפה זה מפורש? Wow. Okay, another riot to what we're saying over here. יפה מאוד, יפה מאוד. Okay, and now you mentioned Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. We have him write it. Tanu Rabbon Asher Nosi Yechta Omer Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai.
Again, Yod Amud Beis.
Third line from Yod Amud Beis. Omer Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Ashrei Ador Shahanosi Sheloi Mevi Korban Al Shigir Gosoi. Gewalt is to the door. Yeah, Mu'ushar. They should be happy that the Nasi, third line from the top of Yud Amud Beis. Omer Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Asher Ador Sha'Nasi Shaloi Mevi Korban Shigir Gosoi. Why? Because if Nasi Shaloi Mevi Korban, Tzarech HaTaloi Mermahu Hedyet. If a Nasi was the Melech, he's humble, right? His humility, he makes a mistake, he's not embarrassed about it. He goes, brings a chatos, the Nasi brings a soyer. So, Oy Bazoi, if he leads in that oifen, you don't even have to tell a Hedyet. A Kolshkin Hedyotis will feel humility when they do a mistake, make a mistake. V'ima Shigir Gosoi Mevi Korban, Tzarech HaTaloi Mar. Mahus doinoi, avada, if he's amazed, he'd for sure have charota. If B'shoigig brings a carbon, the Nasi himself, b'mezid, will definitely do tshuva. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, Ashrei Hador, Sha'Nasi Shaloi, Mevi Korban al Shigigosoi. Maska Flarova Berei Rabba, so Rabbi Rabba asked, Elamayato, wow, anytime it says Asher Nasi Yecht, Asher means Ashrei? Oh, let's go to town. Elamayato chsiv, Eis Asher Chotam and HaKodesh Yishalei. We're talking about Me'ilah. So you're going to say, Ashrei Misha Choto Behektish. Asher Choto B'Kodesh Yishalem. So you want to translate Asher, is Asher, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is introducing a new limud. Every time it says Asher, maybe you can dash an Ashrei. So Abachet of Me'ilah, you can dash an Ashrei. Uvi Rav ben Avot chsiv Asher Choto Asher Hecht Yochanam Dasher Adoru. But Rav ben Avot is Choto Machti. It says Asher Choto Asher Hechti. So it's Ashrei Ador. That's ridiculous. Says the Gemara, no. Shani Yocha, the Shoni Kro B'Diburei. Really over here it means it should have said Im. Yeah, Im Nasi Yechta. By the coin it says Im Koin HaMashiach Yechta. Why is the Torah changing from Im to Asher? From the change we darshan Asher means Ashrei. Dorish Adam is the Ma'id Chuli Yeshav Al Shnasel Oretz. Ashrei im the tzaddikim should give like Maser Rishon Shalom Abo B'Elam Hazeh. Gewaldig is for the tzaddikim who receive K'Maser Rishon Shal Olam Abo B'Olam Hazeh. Yeah, they receive Yisurim B'Olam Hazeh. Whatever the Rosh is going to get in Olam Haba, they already receive an Olam Hazeh. This way, they clean their slate in this world and they're ready for the next world. Olam V'Rishoim Shemagia Alem K'Mas Tzadikim Shalom Abo B'Olam Hazeh. And if a Rosha receives Yisurim, the Rosha receives Schar. Oh, he receives schar b'olam hazeh like the tzaddikim receive olam haba. Olam, why? Because that means Hashem is giving them schar here, and they're going to get nothing there.
He's writing checks on an empty
Yeah,
account.
Why are you hating on the tzaddikim? You're telling me ashrei tzaddikim who suffer in this world and are happy in the other world. What's faginst nicht? Why don't you fagin? Yeah, you know the word faginen. I don't think there's a translation of faginen. How do you say faginen in Hebrew? Lefargen, right? They have to take that word, but. Yeah, why can't you forgive tzaddikim to have it good in both worlds? Why don't you say ashrei?
So what does it mean?
Why can't you be happy
Those
for
who
them?
don't speak Yiddish, what does it mean?
Why can't you be happy for them if they're happy in both worlds? If they get elamarova ashreim letzaddikim shemagim aleim k'maser Hashem shalom hazeh b'olam haba, shalom hazeh b'olam hazeh. they receive Gavaldig Ano in this world. Oilem Hashem Shemgim Aleim Kamas Tikim Shloim Hazeh Ba'olam Hazeh. They should receive Yisurim in this world. Rav Papa v'Ravuna v'Yeshua l'kamei de Rava. We'll end with one story. Rav Papa, Ravuna v'Yeshua came before Rava. Amar Lahu, I came to Masechta Plan and Masechta Plan. Are you Baki? Are you guys fluent in the two Masechtas? Yeah, he asked. Rava asked, Rav Papa, Ravuna v'Yeshua, you guys tell me the Chachamim, you guys know Masechtas Horayos. You guys finished a couple of Masechtas, do you know it well? Amar Lahu, we know. So Gemara says, so Rava says, Itaruta Parta. You have a little investments. You have a bissel geld. So Amr Le'en, yeah. So the Zavna Katina Da'ara, we have a couple of, we have a small piece of real estate that we can be mefarnes ourselves from, and it's good. Kore Alayu Rava. Rava said, Gavaldig. You have mamish, you have a bissel geld, and you could learn Torah, and you finished a couple of masechtas. Ashreim letzadikim shemagim le'kamas Hashem shabaylam hazeh ba'olam hazeh. Gavaldis for tzadikim who can have a no from both worlds, from this world as well as the next world, because they can learn Torah and they can also have a little money. So a very interesting conversation. So Rava, these Gavaldig Amiram, Rav Papa, very interesting. Rav Papa says, yeah, I have a small piece of real estate. We know Rav Papa was one of the wealthiest Amiram in Shas. Yeah, he was a beer. He had a beer brewery. He had a brewery of beer, right? He was tremendously wealthy. And here, a Budweiser, yeah, he owned Budweiser. And here says, Zavnen katina da'ara, yesh li mashu k'tzat, yesh li mashu this. Was he being humble? So the Ben Yehoyada says, Ayin Hara, yeah, Gemara doesn't want to say that he was taka that wealthy. You don't boast about your wealth. You say katina da'ara, you say a little bit, right? But then he said, why is he Bachlal asking about all these things? Why is he asking about their wealth? Why? Rav is interested. He wants a resume. He comes, a Talmud comes. How much tuition you're going to pay? They want to come learn Torah from Rav. Rav is quite interrogating them. Do you know some Masechtas? That I understand. You know, Yeshivas Chacham Lublin, but Rav Meir Shapiro, my great-grandfather learned in Yeshivas Chacham Lublin. He had to know 500 blood, a couple of hundred blood. Yeah, okay, so you want to be accepted in Rav's Yeshiva? Yeah. Are you bekin in a couple of Masechtas? Yes. Okay, you're accepted. What's epis? Money. Where's money coming over here? For the tuition. So Ben Yehoyada says, very interesting. He says, he wasn't sure if they were able to know the Masechtas
And
because it was a miracle. Yeah, it was a miracle. Somehow they had a miracle that they know the Masechtas, hard Masechtas. Or they knew the Masechtas because they had Menuchas HaNefesh and Archavas Hadas, they had geld. So the Ben Yehoyada said, if it's a miracle, Rav is like, okay, okay, maybe he had a certain siyata d'shmaya, got a bracha from a certain gadol, who knows? But if you have taka geld, that means you had Menuchas HaNefesh and Archavas Hadas, it came in such a way, then you'll be able to learn more. You'll be able to learn more without relying, Ein Saimich and Alanes, says the Ben Yehoyada. So he asked them, do you have Menuchas HaNefesh and Archavas Hadas? He brings, I don't know, he says, Rabbeinu Tam. Yeah, I don't know. I tried to look it up. I haven't seen it inside. Ben Yehoyada writes this in a few places in Shas, and one of them is Horayos Yud Beis. Rabbeinu Tam Kushu Lamad, Rabbeinu Yaakov Tam, the Baal Tosfos, Rashi's grandson. He had gold cups of coins. Lama shekesef ma'achiv da'atoy shel adam. So when you learn, you have a couple of $100 bills. You have a couple of the deeds of your properties. Gavaldik, Zug the Heilige Mishnah. Now you could learn Torah. Problem is, you get so caught up in business. Yeah, you have the geld. What happens? The ganze geld, the whole purpose of the money is so you can have a chavas hadas, a menuchas hanefesh to learn a bissel Torah. What was that? Pas b'melech toichlem, mayim b'mesubat toshta. Yeah. So the Rebbetzin says, what about the watch? He says, it makes me learn. Okay.